All right, good afternoon, everybody. How are you doing today? Good. I want to thank Tim Burks for putting on this extraordinary event and for inviting my little panel to come up and see if we can add something to the process of profitability of apps. My name is Paul Kent, and I put on the MacWorld iWorld event, which may have been known to many of you as MacWorld Expo for many years. This is actually the 30th year we're doing MacWorld Expo. We want to talk today about profitability and the task of marketing your apps beyond the App Store. User choice is crazy in every category. There are so many apps competing, and we've really gotten to the point where asking for ratings and reviews has gone beyond cumbersome. So what are the things that you guys have in your, at your disposal to help get the word about your great work out there? So that's what this session is going to be about. There are many ways we could have taken the session. We certainly could have talked a lot about analytics and a lot about those types of things. I thought that the interesting tack to take would be to talk about how essentially word-of-mouth programs can be used to quickly leverage and amplify your message. Here's who I have speaking today. So as I said, I'm Paul Kent, and I'm the Vice President at IDG, and I'm the one who's responsible for the MacWorld iWorld event. It's coming up at the end of March, and we'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of the session. I also have my good friend Chris Breen, who's the Senior Editor at MacWorld, and Jeff Smith, who's the CEO of app developer Smule, very successful marketing organization, very successful app developer, who's going to share some of his experiences and tactics that he's used to help Smule grow to, I believe, over 75 developers now, right? 75 employees in the company. So a great success story. I just asked Jeff before we started, how big was Smule when you started? He said 0. And so he's built the company into the success that it is. All right, so very quickly, I want to talk to you about the event opportunity. Why would people use an event? Why would a developer use an event? They're expensive, they're cumbersome, they take you away from development time. They're an investment in heart and soul in order to accomplish something. And real quickly, here's some of the reasons that not only do we tell you why it's of value to you, but what over and over people who participate in events tell us. Point of sale, especially in MacWorld iWorld, you actually can sell apps. You can convince someone to buy your app and download your app right there and then. Now, I'm keenly aware how much it costs to do a trade show, and hand-selling 99-cent, $1.99, $4.99, $5.99 apps, you got to do a lot of that in order to cover your costs at a show. But being able to do point of sale at a show is certainly one point of recovering the cost of the investment there. Brand awareness, letting people know that you're out there. There's a great press opportunity. Generating leads, generating relationships, media interaction. Media use events to find out what's new in a particular market. Word of mouth, which is really the essence of what we're here to talk about today, is how can one interaction turn into thousands of interactions. Social media reverberation is the most obvious of that. So the people who come and get a demonstration about your app at an event, whatever kind of event it might be, will then take to social media and tell their 200 friends, who hopefully will tell their 200 friends, and so on and so on. Another reason that people do events is to get customer feedback. If you want to get real-life feedback about how people are using your event or what they think about new features, you demonstrate it at an event and you get a wide variety of users that can provide you that feedback. And then just kind of the social networking aspects of it. You know, investors go to events looking for companies to acquire and looking for partnerships, and then things like finding additional talent. What I want to tell you about our particular event that can kind of get it to the point here is this whole word-of-mouth leveraged interaction. So at our event, the media interaction opportunity is pretty cool. So for 250 exhibitors that are at our event, there are 550 media in attendance. So 2 media for every 1 exhibitor. That's a pretty good ratio for you. Last year, 500 print and online stories were written at MacWorld about the products, and it's all about the products. I mean, the products are really the star of any show. Even, you go to a show like CES, it's not about the parties, it's not about the social, it's what happened there, and the products are the essence of the engine that talks about what happened there. So of those 500 print and online stories, our PR agency can track this as to what the readership of the people who wrote those stories, and it got out to 765 million people. That's not to say that every product was mentioned in every story, and every product got 765 million impressions, but it kind of gives you an idea of the scope. And in addition, a lot of broadcast media comes to MacWorld, a lot of broadcast media goes to a lot of these big events, Comic-Con, CES, all these types of events. They're of interest to broadcast media. We had 180 broadcast media stories. That's either radio or television. A lot of them were picked up nationally, and that reached 20 million viewers or listeners in the various markets. So you can see how, the opportunity. Our job is to get everybody under one roof of a similar interest and tell a compelling story. Your job is to build a great product, and then when you're under this roof, with these potential leverage opportunities, to get your message heard and get your story told. When it comes to social media, our event has 25,000 attendees. Those 25,000 attendees generated 50,000 social media impressions, and the social media impressions, if you leverage it out to the number of Facebook friends they have or Twitter followers that they have, ended up being 40 million people. So it's a pretty impactful opportunity if you use it. I would say that one of the things that's interesting about developers and events is that it's demanding that your social chops be up to speed, which is something I hear over and over again, that it's really not the strength of a lot of developers, but it's an interaction opportunity. It's a point in time where you have to impress somebody about how great you are, and that's a social attitude. You can demonstrate it through your technical acuity, but it is by definition a social exercise. So that, in a sense, is the event opportunity. All of these things are the things about why you would do an event. How you monetize, how you strategize, how you, in particular, want to measure your ROI is going to be up to you as you prioritize these different things. But knowing that that's what the opportunities are there. You go to an event, you set up shop, you demonstrate intelligently, passionately, with an eye towards making sure that people walk away from you not only wanting to download your app, but tell everybody that they know about it. And that's really what the opportunity about doing a face-to-face interaction is. Another good aspect of this is, face-to-face interactions will get you customers for life. Attendees have a genuine thrill about meeting the person who wrote the product. You guys are rock stars to them often. And so I just really want to encourage that, even if it's not at my event or at any other event, understand the power and the value. You guys inspire kids to program, you guys inspire people to do great things with the apps that you put out there. It's a very powerful exchange, and you shouldn't take it lightly, because it's really one of the things that, like I said, creates customers for life. So that's the event opportunity. At the end of this presentation, I want to talk to you a little bit about something we want to do for you guys if you would like to come to MacWorld, but I'll save the hardcore sales pitch till the very end, until you've been dazzled and tickled in the right way. So I'd like to bring up now my good friend Chris Breen from MacWorld Publication, talk about how you can get media stories written about you. Chris?
Hello. So actually, my portion of this talk is designed to kind of bum you out. And that's the problem is that it's really hard to get press attention. But it's really easy to get the wrong kind of press attention, which means that you will be ignored for the rest of your life. So, in order to make this sort of positive, instead of just simply depress you for the rest of this and feel like you've wasted your money, I have a do list and I have a don't list. And the do list is hopefully helpful, and the don't list is hopefully helpful in that you won't do the things that you're not supposed to. So we'll start with the do list, and the first thing is, and when I say I or me, what I'm really talking about is the press in general. It turns out that we in the press talk to each other, and we share horror stories of getting pitched and the various kind of pitches, and we laugh about people who perform poorly in pitches behind your backs. So the things you should know. One thing, if you're going to pitch me, meaning generally anybody in particular, know what they write about. I get maybe 50 pitches a day that I see, and I probably get another 50 that I don't see, because I have macros and filters set up so that some people's pitches automatically go to the trash and I never see them again. If you know what I write about, you won't be on that list of people whose pitches I never see. For example, I've been writing about Apple stuff since 1988, which means I'm old, and it means that I've been around for a while. And I'm also a musician. So if you have a music app on iOS and you know that I'm a keyboard player, I should pitch that guy because I can speak music language to him, and maybe that will work out. On the other hand, I've made it very publicly known that I loathe social networking that takes any shred of my privacy. If you're in that business, don't pitch me, because you will automatically go there. Know what I've covered in the past. If I've covered apps X, Y, and Z that all happen to be part of a certain class of apps, there's a good chance that if you fall in there, that you're going to be marketing that to me or pitching it to somebody on our staff who is me. And if you know everybody on the staff and what they do, then you can pitch them as well. Know what I'm covering now. It may be that I covered an app, I did a review of it 6 years ago, and I haven't touched that kind of app since then. You're wasting your time probably if that was 6 years ago. So what these three things have in common is that you have to do your homework, which means find out where you want to be. Do you want to be at Engadget? Do you want to be at The Verge? Do you want to be at Gizmodo? Do you want to be at MacWorld? Do your homework, figure out who works there and what they cover. And then pitch them individually, and you may get in over the wall. So know that I'm the perfect person to pitch. A lot of times people will pitch our entire staff, figuring the more pitches I send in, the better I'm going to do. Again, we talk about that. Did everybody get that pitch today? Yep. Off it goes. Because this is an indication that you're not putting much of an effort into it. You just say, well, I'll throw it at everybody at this address, and then it'll work out, and it doesn't. Present well. This is not an example of that. But a lot of times, I will talk to people, and generally it's PR people instead of people who are actually the developers. But if I pick up the phone and there's somebody, and I don't mean to be a pig about this, but often it's a woman who is unaware that in the English language, not every sentence ends with a question mark. And so if I get a pitch saying, you know, I get about 4 sentences in, and I think you're probably about 16 years old. Either you're cheap, or somebody has never recorded your voice. When you present well, make sure you have your points well, make sure you speak well. I want to know that the person I'm talking to on the other end of the phone is a professional. They're going to be very clear about what they're marketing to me, and they're not going to end their sentences with a question mark. So if you do that kind of phone work, record your voice, do your pitch, record it a couple of times so you can listen back and have other people listen back and say, do I sound like a pro or do I sound like I'm 12? The latter, not so good. Be realistic in your pitch. If I see a pitch that includes the words game changer, revolutionary, or disruptive, because nothing is all that. If your app can walk on water and you can prove it, okay, you get to use one of those phrases, but not all three. Who has done this, right? I mean, who has done this kind of technology? Google, Apple, no, not Microsoft. But there are certainly people who have created this level of work, but it's hardly anybody, and it happens like twice in a decade. So be realistic. If you're going to pitch to me, and you say, we're going to release this thing in 2 months, and you give me a set of dates and times it's going to come out, I know that you're not very experienced. Because you know better than that. You know and I know that when you throw something into the Apple Store, anything could happen. And so if somebody says, yes, we're going to hit this deadline on such and such a date, such and such a date, such and such a date, it indicates to me that you're not quite sure when that's really going to happen, or you haven't been in the business very long. I'm more than happy to take a pitch from somebody who says, look, our plan is generally this, but you know how Apple is. I do know how Apple is. Good, thank you for being realistic about it. It doesn't walk on water, that's fine. I don't need it to walk on water. Just tell me exactly what it does. Don't oversell. Because if I do look at it, and it's not what you said it is, off you go. Keep it short, which I'm not very good at. If you send a pitch, particularly an email, that's 8 paragraphs long, you can. It's okay if it's detailed enough, it's interesting enough, but I want those first 2 sentences to grab me. 1, why am I looking at this? Why have you sent it to me? I want to be convinced that I'm the right person to look at this. Great, okay, you've sold me on the first sentence. What's the second sentence? Got that? Okay, it seems to be appropriate. If I want details, I'll go on. But if you ask me about my weekend, not so interested. How's the weather? It's really warm and we're drying out here, so not so interesting either. So conversational is fine, but really kind of get to the point, sell it as best you can. And then have patience. If I have agreed to work on something or take a look at something, it's not a really great idea to follow up with me 2 days later. I'm really busy. I mean, I don't mean to turn this into a session about how terrible my job is because I love my job. But I'm busy and I'm doing other things. If I've agreed to look at something, I promise you I will look at it, but it may be a week, maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month. There's some stuff I'm still sitting on that's 6 months old, and I know it's tragic and I feel bad about it, but I have other priorities sometimes. So be patient. It's okay to check in with me every once in a while, but don't do it all the time. So if that wasn't depressing enough, here's the don't list. Don't offer me a chat with a C-level unless it's appropriate. I get so many pitches from C. I can set you up with the CTO, CEO, CFO, the CPAP machine, whoever it may be. Nobody else gets that, thank you. And it's a PR trick, right? They say, oh, we're going to get you with a C-level because it's like, oh, really? The C-level is going to make time for me? I'm not really interested in talking to Johnny MBA unless Johnny MBA really, really, really knows what's going on. A lot of times I'll talk to somebody and I'm talking to the C-level and I'm asking specific questions about something and they have the marketing angle and they have kind of the general idea of what's going on. I want to talk to you guys, the ones who've actually coded stuff, that know the ins and outs of it, that understand where the market for this thing is. Now, a lot of times when people say, oh, you want to talk to the CEO? Well, it turns out the CEO is one of the 2 people that work at the company, and that's fine. But if you're going to pitch me, say, CEO and actually the guy who developed this, because I have much more sympathy for, for like somebody who's struggled for the last year working on something than somebody at a huge corporation that went to business school. So, where appropriate, do it, but add a little bit of extra information because the C-level thing doesn't impress anybody. Don't try to tempt me with scoops. A lot of people say, hey, I can give you early entry into this. You'll be the first to see it. Yes, me and who else? Well, actually 50 other people. And again, it's sort of that like, you'll be the first one to get this. I don't care about being the first one. I'm not interested in scoops. I want to spend time, quality time with something, and I don't care about being first to do it. I want information about it, I want to have a thorough review of it, and I'm not going to rush it just because I feel like I'm getting a scoop. So it's not a good temptation. Don't call me. Ever. What I really do is I write, right? So it would be like, here you are, you're coding, right? It's 3 in the morning, coding. This is really focusing on this. Somebody calls you, and they want to sell you a vacuum cleaner. Not that you're vacuum cleaner salespeople. Anybody developing an iOS vacuum cleaner app? No. But it's that sort of thing. It's like, yeah, I got your pitch, but now is not a good time because, oh, now I've lost my train of thought. If I allowed calls to come in and get pitched on, I wouldn't get any other work done. So that's not a good avenue. Don't circle back. Anybody in PR here? Nobody? Good. Okay. So if you work with an agency that does the circle back thing, and maybe you haven't seen this, but this is how it works. Somebody sends you a pitch, and it does this because it's totally inappropriate for what you do. Then they send a follow-up saying, I'm just circling back to, and then they get thrown there because circling back never works. There's a little thing that's going on Twitter about people who are in the press, and it was somebody's little infographic, and it was querying the press. How many of you change your mind about reviewing something when you get a follow-up call or a circle back email? 98.7% said it makes no difference to me, it annoys me. Don't do it. Don't pitch me on Twitter, LinkedIn, or Facebook. Some people set up business accounts to do that. It's not a really good avenue because most people in the press use this for personal reasons. Twitter, it's like, yeah, the problem with Twitter is it leaves a trail. So you pitched me on Twitter. I look at your Twitter stream, and there are 50 other people that you've pitched on Twitter. Great. So I'm going to let one of the other 49 take care of it, and you are there, and you're blocked. LinkedIn, I don't know you. Why would I connect with you on LinkedIn? I have a job. I'm not looking for a job. If you're my pal, maybe, and I know what your work is like. Now, if I've actually reviewed something of yours, and you say, hey, you reviewed my thing, you really liked it, let's connect on LinkedIn, absolutely. But if you're coming out of the blue, I don't know your work, I don't know who you are, so why would I do that? Facebook, I don't use Facebook. Don't make it hard for me to get information. If I'm going to look at something that you've created, and I go to your website, and I need a high-res image, or I need more information, or I need something else, do not put it behind some kind of wall. Oh, you need to call us so that you can get the password so that you can get it. Don't do that. I just want somewhere where it says press information. I click on that. There are the high-res images. Here are the documents if I need them. If I need to get a manual, why your apps would ever need such a thing, I can get that too. So make it easy for me to make my job easy. And then avoid clueless PR firms. Again, because nobody here works in PR, we can speak honestly. There are PR firms that will approach you and they'll say, if you give us X amount of dollars, we will get your pitch in front of 10,000 journalists. You will have 9,999 journalists do this because, one, they're not targeting. They didn't follow the dues. So I'm getting pitches for stuff that I'm not interested. I know it's coming off somebody's Vocus PR list that you've paid how many thousands of dollars for a month. It's not targeted at me, and so you're dead to me. Better, one other thing. If a PR firm, if you're working with them, if they're really, really aggressive with you, they're also being really, really aggressive with the press, and they're turning off the press. I have tried to ban entire PR agencies, SSPR, because they wouldn't take me off their list. They kept sending me pitch after pitch after pitch that was not related to anything I did. I contacted them and said, really, could you either focus this or just take me off? They said, yeah, no problem, we'll take you off. Next day, 3 more pitches come in. Could you take me off? 3 more pitches come in. 3 more. So I went through 7 different people at SSPR. They said, finally, one of them was honest and said, well, I don't know that we can do that. I don't think we can take you off the list. And I said, what if I publicly shame you? And they said, well, that might work. And so I did, because I got more pitches. And I said, okay, the public shaming starts in 3 days. And sure enough, in they came, and I saw on Twitter, said, do not use at SSPR. And interestingly enough, some developers who had been represented by them in the past piped in and then said, yeah, we used to use them, but we don't anymore because they piss you guys off. Right, and then I retweeted that. Mm-hmm. So, the good thing is that you can actually do some of this stuff right. There are some PR firms that do really well. What they will do instead is they will have a list of 50 journalists that they can get to that they've targeted. I know one person in the business who does that. Regardless of which pitch I get from her, I know it's going to be good, and I will always follow up with her. So if you do your homework and you know how to pitch properly and know who to talk to, there's a really good chance at least you're going to establish a relationship. You may not get a review from the first one, but maybe the second one, maybe the third one, or you get those people talking to other people about it via Twitter or other things. There are lots of apps that I like. I'll talk about them on Twitter even if I can't review them. That causes other people to talk about them and then for other people to pick them up. And that's my time, and thanks.
That's awesome. I know Chris well. He's not always that grouchy. All right, we'll do questions at the end. Hopefully we'll have a few minutes so we can take a couple questions. And now our third presenter is Jeff Smith, CEO of Smule. And actually, can we have a round of applause? Jeff just finished his PhD, and so I think this is probably his first presentation as Dr. Smith. And Jeff is going to give some real-world examples about how he grew Smule and the marketing tactics that have worked for him. Jeff?
Thanks, Paul. Chris, thanks. I'm going to discontinue our relationship with SSPR tomorrow. Oh, by the way, Happy New Year. And I hope many of you have an opportunity to go off and have a nice Happy New Year dinner tonight. So I wanted to share some of our experiences at Smule. I hope some of them might be helpful for you. I can't claim we figured everything out, but as a company, we've been around for 5.5 years, and we've learned a few things along the way, and we've made some progress. In fact, if we were a music label, you could say we had 6 diamonds and 6 platinums as far as our track record, and we're not shipping a lot of software each month. In fact, each year. Last year, we only shipped 1 product, our new guitar product. But typically, we'll see about 250,000 to 350,000 new installs per day. That puts us at a top 10 publisher of non-games on iOS. We also ship our products on Android. In cumulative, we've had 150 million installs of our products, including products like Magic Piano, T-Pain, Auto Rap. Auto Rap, by the way, converts speech into rap and corrects bad rapping. And we just shipped another version of Auto Rap so that you don't have to rap alone anymore. It's called Rap Battles. But also Sing Karaoke and Glee and some of these other products. We were one of the first out there on the App Store with Ocarina that turned your phone into a magical flute-like instrument and allowed you to play songs and then share your songs with people across the world. In fact, today we'll have about 2.5 million songs created with our products. And every day, believe it or not, our users are uploading about 500 gigabytes of songs to our network. So we're storing a terabyte of content every 2 days. It's made for an interesting summer. Our engineers and our operations team have had an adventure. Here's the picture of some of our Sing Karaoke profiles pages. These are profiles people create when they're creating songs so that you can go find who they are if you want to go sing a song with them. In fact, that's a very popular act on our network. And the globe shows you places where people have uploaded songs. And so these aren't just users of songs, these are uploads. And here's the good news. It's not on this map. I need to update it. This map is like 5 months old. We actually picked up Antarctica 2 months ago. And I don't know exactly what it means, but we listened to it and it was real and it was a duet. It wasn't bad. So that's just a brief overview on Smule. So when I think about being a developer and trying to get people into your products, it certainly is a challenge, and it's a challenge for everyone. It's a challenge for us. I wanted to share some perspectives on how you might go about doing that, and I'd be happy, along with my fellow panelists, to entertain questions about that. What I might say first off is I agree with Paul. Mobile is not the same as online and virtual. If you're coming from web, if you're coming from Facebook, I think you need to rethink what mobile means. Facebook can very much mean virtual relationships, and in mobile, typically they're not. In mobile, they're typically face-to-face relationships, and it's often that word of mouth that becomes one of the most significant channels of how you're going to communicate a value proposition. It makes sense. You have your phone with you. You can pull your phone out of your pocket, show it to a friend, and do a demo right there, anytime, anywhere. And it seems quite obvious, and perhaps there's not a lot of science associated with this fact, but it's significant. In fact, it's quite significant. So more on that in a moment. But I think as a developer, you can go down one of two paths in trying to populate your application, try to generate installs, get users into your products. One is an organic, and this relates to my point around word of mouth. And that is, you try to get people to discover your app, and you try to get them to then go off and download it. Another tactic, another model, is paid. And in paid, of course, there's this golden rule. And the golden rule is, what's the lifetime value of a user? What's the cost per install? And if that's positive, or you have deep pockets, then you can scale that. And what you'll find is a lot of gaming vendors really focus on that second formula. They get really, really good at monetization. And then they bank on the spread between how valuable a given user is and how much it costs to acquire the user, and then they build a discipline around acquisition. And then you have other folks like the Instagrams of the world that got big because of K-factor, because of these organic growth. And look, viral, by the way, I hate the word, but that's one aspect of K-factor, but it's not the only aspect. It is one. Now, I guess the first thing to say about these two models is they're not mutually exclusive. You can do both. And in fact, if you get good at, call it K-factor, and I'll quantify that, then that has a correlation with your CPI dropping. So for example, suppose you figure out how to have 5 users produce 1 user. So if you have 5 users in your product, and through word of mouth or through sharing on Facebook or whatever it is, and you can measure this, they bring in 1 new user. then you could reduce your CPI basically by 1/5. And so now your CPIs drop because if you bring in 5 users, you're going to get 1 for free, right? And so they're not mutually exclusive, but they are different paths and they're different approaches. My fear is that people looking at this presentation would just try to build to that spec, and I think you would probably miss the most important point, and the most important point is that you have to build a beautiful product. If you go into it with a strategy, I'm going to build this social engine with it, I'm going to drive this advertising capability into it, I'm going to build this monetization curve that's perfect and optimized so that when they get to level 5, they've bought 20 coins from me. I think if that's the strategy in the design, good luck. Because ultimately, it's going to be people evaluating your product at face value, and did they enjoy using it or did they not? And if they don't, everything else you bolt on won't matter. And so I really think almost the science of growing installs on mobile is the science of building products that people love using and that people want to talk about. But there is some science, I think, that can be applied to that process. All right, so here's some data I wanted to share with you. We've gone off and measured how people have discovered our applications. And I've given you data for I Am T-Pain and a Magic Piano. And so these were user surveys. It's not perfect in terms of methodology, but these emails went out to a couple 100,000 people. And so people that didn't have emails or people that chose not to respond are not in this group. So again, you have to put an asterisk next to the methodology. But word of mouth on T-Pain was the #1 channel of how they discovered the product. Somebody demoed it to them, somebody told them about it. And our I Am T-Pain product, by the way, is 4 years old. And we still see, it's paid $2.99, and we still see thousands of downloads a day, 4 years later. So that ended up being a significant channel, and we think that there's word of mouth because it's fun to sound like T-Pain. It's fun to sound like Lil Wayne, especially if you're a 19-year-old white kid in Scottsdale. But you could see even our Magic Piano had a pretty strong word of mouth score. So if you're a product developer, how do you build word of mouth? Easier said than done, right? Easier said than done. But I think it behooves you to think about that before you build the product. Versus, this Facebook integration or your level 5 and how many coins associated with it. But why would somebody want to talk about your product? And for us, at Smule, we have a green light process where if a designer's pitching a new concept, for us it's the teaser test. Describe the 30-second video that we'd put on YouTube or Vimeo that demonstrates the product. What is it? Can you get to the demo in 30 seconds? And is it fun? Are we excited about the concept you've described? And that sounds pretty basic, and perhaps it is, but it actually is a pretty good first-order filter on concepts that you perhaps don't want to fund for that initial phase of development. Because if you can't describe it, a video that's 30 seconds long of why I want to use a product or why I'm going to talk about it, then you probably won't have that reason. It's probably too complicated, or it's probably not something that's exciting. In T-Pain, it was pretty simple. I'm going to sound like T-Pain. I'm going to plug my phone into the speaker. Here you go. And it worked. So, critical channel. And that's why conferences like this or conferences like MacWorld actually make some sense. Like, here's a quick MacWorld story for you that relates to this whole word of mouth concept. And it relates to maybe a broader concept I would talk about as physical marketing versus virtual marketing. Okay, virtual marketing, whatever. Physical marketing, I think, still is significant. So I was in the Salt Lake City airport 3 years ago, and I ran into this 12-year-old kid who had a Smule t-shirt on. We're going, holy cow, where'd that come from? I've always believed in giving away a lot of t-shirts and clothing people that don't have enough money to put clothes on and the rest. But I also think it's just a great way to spread our brand. And do the CPM math on how many times somebody's going to see that kid's t-shirt if he's wearing it. In the Salt Lake City airport alone, holy cow, I paid for the t-shirt 3 times over. So I go up to this kid and I go, hey, what's that? And he goes, oh, it's Smule. Well, what's that? Oh, they build awesome music apps. Oh, how'd you get the t-shirt? Oh, my dad got it for me at MacWorld. Literally. So his dad's out there hanging out at MacWorld, and we were there showing at a booth, and we were giving out t-shirts. And we were there basically with our community trying to build grassroots for those people that were going to influence everyone else around them. So, small anecdote, but it was kind of fun, but it relates to this whole word of mouth point. But there is, I think, a method of thinking about how word of mouth gets integrated into that product greenlight cycle. Okay, so number 2 for us is YouTube. Our videos that we've produced or contracted or done with affiliates have generated almost 1 billion views. Today alone, our videos on YouTube with us and with our partners will see about 50,000 views. Our cost for those videos ongoing is 0. Yet those videos continue to generate mind share for us and continue to generate word of mouth and installs. People even forget that the first version of Angry Birds had a fantastic YouTube video. Go check it out. It was unbelievable. They developed the characters in that very first video. It was beautiful. And the thing is that one of the things that's effective, I think, online in marketing, which really needs to be a physical world, is video, because I think it's the closest approximation to a physical word of mouth. I think you can get that point across in a video much better than you could in a banner or a search word or some of these other things that are a bit more abstract. And I think that's why we found video has been such an effective channel for us in mobile, here in the context of organic, but then you'll see in the next slide, also in the terms of advertising. And we found video advertising is actually the most effective advertising channel for us on mobile. But these ads aren't 2 minutes long. They're 30 seconds, they're 15 seconds, and they're getting to that demo, that essence of the mechanic and the value proposition really early. Reminds me of when we launched our very first product. It wasn't Ocarina, it was Sonic Lighter. It was a virtual cigarette lighter. It was the 19th virtual cigarette lighter, and this is back when there weren't 500,000 applications in the store. The App Store was just born. And there was even a virtual cigarette lighter shootout. We won, thank you. For us, it was just a market test. We wanted to understand if we could use this real-time audio technology on the phone, and for us, the audio technology was detecting friction against the microphone so you could blow out the flame. And the test worked. And so we shot our first video. My co-founder, who's on the faculty at Stanford, Dr. Go Wong, got this Liggity soundtrack that we kind of hacked from the 2010 Space Oddity soundtrack, and shot this dark film, kind of atavistic type of tribal thing, where he's playing with a flame, and then he blows it out. That was it. And we sent that off to Gizmodo, and we didn't ask them for a deadline. And we didn't tell them it was disruptive, thank goodness. And Gizmodo, it was a good fit for Gizmodo, come on. And Gizmodo comes back and they write an article and they accused us of starting a cult. And it was the most fantastic press article that's ever been written about our company, because that got picked up by everybody, and then literally Sonic Lighter was #1 in every store in 3 days. I kid you not. That was our first #1 title. We're not shipping Sonic Lighter anymore, for whatever reason. But the point was that it was communicating that value proposition through YouTube, which we could do, and that 30-second demo for that product was, check it out, I can blow out the flame. And sure enough, that's what people were doing in bars all across the country. We had a very active community in Quartier Latin in downtown Paris, and we even put up a website, Paris is burning, and then we were comparing kilojoules burn, Tokyo versus Paris. I think Paris won. But we had some fun with that, but it was related again to building a product and thinking about that word of mouth and then translating that online into YouTube, which we did. Press is significant for us, particularly if you put a YouTube asset out there that's good. If it's not completely commercial and hi, buy my product, hi, we're awesome, canned, contrived. If it's real, if it's authentic, if it's capturing an experience, if it's as much about art as it is about commerce, then maybe the press is interested in it, and maybe other people are interested in it. And we take producing a video as seriously as we do take producing an application. And then when we launch video content, if the press likes it, then we get PageRank for a very long time. You go search for Ocarina today on Google, see what happens. And then App Store. There's a lot you could do in the App Store. And here's where it's a lot of science. Getting featured, you're lucky 1 week out of 52. Great. Thank you very much. What are you going to do the other 51 weeks? What's sustainable? That's not sustainable. That's a nice pop. That's going to save you money on advertising or something. But it's not going to take you to the promised land. There are lots of things you can do on the App Store, just like what you would on any website, to optimize the experience. And the key there is test. Test, test, test. What matters? The first sentence of your landing page, your icon. Your icon matters a lot. Piano is typically top 10 music. Before we switched the icon, we had a hard time cracking top 20. We split test, 8, 9 different icons. We stayed true to our design aesthetic, but we found the icon that people wanted to click on. The landing page test, we also tested. The first image you see, it's a big deal. SEO matters in the App Store. The title of your application is the most important thing for SEO. You want to come up with an esoteric brand? Make sure you have a big marketing budget behind it, because nobody's going to search for it. You want to lose literal terms? Well, then figure out how you're going to differentiate your literal terms if everybody's searching for a piano. But these things do matter, and they're going to then impact your CPI. Great, you run an ad, how many click, how many convert? It's this big funnel, and every knob you turn on the funnel absolutely matters. So I'm pushing the time. I'm going to try to plow through 1 or 2 more slides and then see if there are any questions. But this is real data. So the other graph I'm showing on this slide is NP. So NP is a net promoter methodology that's measuring how likely a user is to recommend your product. And you can benchmark your products with net promoter. And so it's kind of the science on the right side of seeing how likely people are going to do the things that I'm showing you on the left side of the people that you're going to do on the right side of the slide. When we benchmarked Smule, we're in the 30s, low 30s, high 20s. The top 50 games were somewhere in the 12s. And this is one of the reasons why we know we had a higher K factor and why we have some of the lowest CPIs in the business today. And it's because our users do recommend our products. And this is something you can test and iterate. It's hard to move the MP score a lot with the same concept, but it at least can inform you of where you stand and how much you might want to market a product, and how successful you might be in scaling a product. So here's an example of organic. We launched the rap battles. We literally went down to Compton and shot a video of an experienced rapper going up against the kid, and the kid used our product and he sounded better with our product. It's a pretty fun video. We launched with that, but we always will launch with a video. On the organic side as well, we've opened up our network even beyond applications. We think of this as a big funnel of people learning about our products through our content, and then through our content eventually wanting to download and install our product. So if you went up to Smule.com, you can hear some pretty fun performances of people. In fact, let me see if I could track one real quick.
I don't think audio's plugged in, Jeff.
No, all right, forget it. All right, forget it. Go to Smule.com. What you're going to see on Smule.com is our top performers, and these people are unbelievable. It's better than a radio station because it's not all canned. It's real people. It's real authentic content that's being streamed up from our products every day. And it's a way for us to give people an alternative to the traditional radio channels, but it's also a way for us to grow awareness of our products. And so that brings up the slide of, when you think about distribution and trying to create awareness, you can think about trying to build these channels and then bring people in, but you forget the fact that really what's going to push it is amazing content that people want to see. And if you got content, great, you can push stuff up the funnel and eventually people want to consume it. It's not building some magical site and thinking about the distribution. So product first, content first. I think these are some of the key rules. And by content here, we're talking about, are there great songs our people are singing that other people want to hear? Yes, no. Switching over to the other rule, so I talked about organic so far, just a footnote on paid. At Smule, we do advertising. We buy about 18% of our installs. So that means of the 250,000 installs we have today, we'll buy 50,000. On a blended CPI basis, because we're not buying most of our installs, the numbers are pretty low. If you don't blend it, we're looking at CPIs around 50, 60, 70, 80 cents across our products. And we use different channels. We use Facebook, Vungle, Flurry, Ad Colony. We're focused on video, but we have picked up some more work on Facebook, and we've made it work. Facebook has its challenges, by the way. Facebook doesn't give you frequency caps. Facebook doesn't think you need them because they don't think there's any way that their content engine would possibly allow a user to see the same content 3 times. Well, they're wrong. You see the same content all the time, and so unless you're rotating your creatives and changing your targeting, you'll have CPI spikes in as fast as 2 weeks to 1 week in. But There are ways to then test how these channels are doing, not only in terms of the cost per install, but then the lifetime value of the user. And we've built the infrastructure where we will track LTV and CPI by channel, and then we'll look at the spread by channel, and if it's profitable, we'll keep it turned on, and if it's not, we'll turn it off. Can be done, and this is a bit more scientific than, of course, the approaches associated with trying to build organic, K-factor, and the rest. Anyway, I hope a couple of these insights and comments might help you as you're trying to generate more awareness for your products. And if there are any questions at this point in time, I guess we'll open it up.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
Hi, question for Jeff. You talked about A/B testing icons, app icons.
Yeah.
How exactly did you go about doing that? Did you do it like through the App Store or like?
Yeah, Apple hasn't enabled it. So the question is testing A/B testing icons. Neither Apple nor Google has given you the infrastructure that you have on web to split test in the store, right? And so what you need to do is find a proxy for that. And it turns out there are several online proxies that simulate that environment. So you can send an email, jeff@smule.com, and I can refer you to a couple of the ones we use. It's not expensive, absolutely worth doing.
I have a question about advertising on Facebook. Our company has a web presence where we do advertise on Facebook, and it works wonderfully because of all the comments and people recommending us and so on. Is this in the same way possible if you advertise on mobile devices and on for downloads? Or
Yes.
Is this,
Yes.
So how's your
Yeah,
experience
so
been?
for us, we're advertising to drive installs. It's performance-based advertising on Facebook. That's the goal, period. How many installs we can get through the advertisement. And so we'll actually target only mobile in terms of the target users. And Facebook's very good at allowing you to specify the demographic. I could target 19-year-old guys that like T-Pain that are on mobile devices in the United States. And so in that respect, it's actually quite sophisticated. It has the other limitations I mentioned. But yeah, we found that to be a good channel for driving mobile installs. Now you have to, the thing about advertising, it's so important to test. It's so important to test, iterate, test, iterate, test, iterate. And the other thing about advertising is you're not really going to understand what the CPIs are until you've allowed the creatives to run on a network for several days. It's got to populate the network, and then the good ad networks will then optimize. Well, they'll pull out the bad performing channels, and they'll target it a little bit better to the good performing channels, and then you'll settle in with what the CPI might be after some period of time. But yes, we use Facebook to drive installs of our products.
Any other questions?
So a question, you mentioned, Jeff, NPM. Are you actively tracking that on all of your products?
Yes.
And can you explain a little bit more about the units? You said an NPM of 12. What does that mean?
Say that again.
What are the units? When you say an NPM of 12.
A net promoter score.
Yeah.
So net promoter is their own scale. And so a net promoter is how likely a user is to recommend a product. And so what we're doing is we're benchmarking our products relative to some of the other top performing products in the store. And that's going to better inform some of our marketing decisions on how much we're going to promote one product or another product and how much we're going to invest in it. And so it's best understood relative to other products. I would guess the Apple iPhone has an NP score of around 60, crazy high. Our products are benchmarked around 30s. Most of the apps, the top performing apps you'll see in the store will be benchmarked around 10.
So that doesn't mean like one person recommends 12 people or anything?
No,
So
I think it's just the scale they've used, and it makes the most sense in the context of that scale relative to other products.
what could we do to estimate that on our own? Like
You
what are-
can do it. It's like 5K exercise depending on how you want to do it. But you can use that same methodology, or you could test a different methodology. There are others. And there are firms that specialize in this, and you contract them and say, benchmark my MP score, and then benchmark it against these other 5 products. That's how we've done
I
it.
think we got time for one more question.
Yeah, let's do that.
Thanks. How are teens and 20-somethings different, and how would you reach them as opposed to older people?
How would you market to teens and 20-somethings? I will punt this over to Jeff, because you're doing it.
Demo matters a lot, right? But there's two sides to demographics. One is how much does it cost to bring in, say, a 19-year-old, if that's my goal, and then the other is, well, how valuable is the 19-year-old? 80% of our business is subscription. 20% is advertising. 40-year-olds are 3 times more valuable for us than 18-year-olds. 18-year-olds about half as much, however, to acquire. So given that, we'll still go opt for the 40-year-olds. How do we target them? Well, some ad networks actually allow you to specify a demographic. Outside of the advertising networks, we'll think about messaging and creatives. One of the reasons we partnered with T-Pain is we knew there was a sweet spot of users in a specific demographic that we could target that he's built. You know, Sony Music invested $12 million in that brand. He was up to 5 million Facebook likes, but we knew the demographic, and we knew that demographic and how to message that demographic and bring that. But the choice of T-Pain was, to some extent, demographic informed as well. So I think there are different approaches to think about what types of users you want to bring into your products. But I think maybe the cautionary point is that keep in mind there's two sides to that equation.
And also, I'll just add, observing my own daughter who's 12, I look at the stuff she shows me. So she gets a lot of stuff from Instagram, and as Jeff was saying, video is really important. So she's not cruising the App Store. One of her friends has done something through Instagram, giving her a YouTube link. She shows that to me and says, "This is awesome," and then she buys it.
Yeah.
So, get into the avenues, because Facebook is for old people. She won't look at that, and I won't let her look at it. But Instagram is huge.
Yeah, it's funny. Kids don't use email so much, right? So if it's an email marketing campaign, you're trying to get 15-year-olds, good luck.
Jeff, it's a pretty new science, but is there any data about the lifetime value of collecting marketing to 19, 20-year-olds versus 40-year-olds in terms of how much you're going to make off them over a lifetime?
Yeah. I mean, we correlate retention and renewals by demographic, and basically the older users stick around longer also. Now, the flip side is, so they monetize better for us, they stick around longer, however, they're less active socially, so we're not going to get the same K-factor impact from me as we might from a 15-year-old who might blast out 20 Facebook messages a day.
Yeah, interesting. All right, any last questions? One more? All right, well, I want to thank Jeff and Chris, and I hope we added some value to the conference here, and I hope gave you some insights as to helping you with your marketing efforts. We're going to do a giveaway. We have one giveaway, if it's all right.